Hi, Juliet from Wyoming. Juliet wants to know the stripes on the nyala that we saw earlier. Is it like the zebra, unique to each and every individual, much like a human fingerprint? And the answer is yes. No two nyala will have exactly the same stripes. So it's not as distinct as you would have with zebra, but yes. And the same would go for kudu. It would definitely be different with every single individual. Scott, this is quite a sizable herd of zebra for this part of the world, I must say.
It is indeed. I haven't seen them for quite a few days now.
I'm surprised at how relaxed these zebras are in terms of proximity to the vehicle. I found the area where I'm currently conducting my safaris, they tend to be a lot less relaxed. We are in quite a remote part of the park where we are quite far from tourist roads. And the zebras in that particular region will never allow us this close to them with the vehicle. So for me, this is quite a treat to just be able to be this close to. And as a person who have my own horses back home, I can, even after all these years, sit and watch zebra. I mean, I often ask myself, you know, even after having studied all of this, I mean, it still baffles me. Why? We know why. Why the stripes? I mean, why does no other horse worldwide have that, and it's only zebra? It's amazing feedback that I often get from clients post-safari. I like to keep in touch with existing, with old clients and so forth, and I always try and ask them, you know, what was the one animal that stood out for you on your safari, expecting something like leopard or lion or one of those, and I promise you, 90% of the time, it would be either zebra or giraffe. And very often it is zebra. It is such an iconic African creature, found nowhere else. Just slowly push through them. Got a little foal crossing the road. And just like with horses, we refer to them as mares and stallions. They are essentially equids, wild horses, a wild species of horse. Welcome, Georgie from Australia, who would like to know, she's noted that one of the zebras does not have as much or as many stripes on its front legs. Is that normal, and how often do you see that? Georgie, it is fairly common, just like with humans. Some people will have darker hair, some people will have more hair, some people will, you know, there'll be variances, and that's all natural. It's just like fingerprints. No two zebras are the same. It is fairly common, and it is not something unusual for us to be alarmed about, genetically speaking, or something like that. It's just purely variance within the species, genetic variance, and genetic variance is always a good thing, as long as the general blueprint of the animal stays the same. We're going to slowly but surely move on and try and locate those lions, or perhaps a leopard. From Mississippi. Adam says he's seen zebra where the stripes are more brown than black. And he would like to know, is that common and why is that? Adam, thank you very much for your question. With zebra, again, very similar to the previous question, it's all genetic variants. You are bound to find that often. In fact, if you go very close to these zebras, you'll find that even though the stripes appear black, it is actually brown hair. Now, bear in mind, what you see as black is basically the pigment melanin, which is actually brown. So some zebras in the stripes will have larger densities of melanin within the hair, and some not, which will result in probably more of a brownish color compared to black. It's also across the species with the Hartmann's mountain zebra, which will have brown stripes and not black stripes, especially when you're up close. So yeah, thank you for that. Scott yesterday mentioned steenbok, and here we go. It's not often you see the male and the female together. This is the male. You can see they got these small little pencil horns. One of our smallest antelope here, about 30 centimeters, 30, 40 centimeters shoulder height, tiny little guy. And it's also one of our monogamous antelope as well. The reason that these smaller antelope are often monogamous and pair up for life lies in, firstly, their size, and secondly, their feeding habits. Now, if you look at mammals in general, the smaller the creature, the higher and faster its metabolism would be. And this necessitates it to feed on a much higher quality fodder. Now, steenbok here, the general grass that you see in the area, the general leaves are not quality enough for them. They're looking for very special isolated little clusters of herbs and forbs and so forth. And these are plants that don't occur in high densities. These plants need to be, or put it that way, they need to find themselves a small territory. And you can imagine if there was 20 or 30 of them around in the same space and they find these one little forb or herb, there's not going to be enough food for all of them. So they have evolved the structure where the male and female collectively will have a territory roughly about 2 to 4 hectares in size, and they will defend that actively against other pairs, especially the male. So because now you have a lower density of these small antelope, they don't occur in herds. So now access to females will then also be limited. Therefore, it's rather opted to have a monogamous structure where a male can pair up with a female for life, and he's got his female, and every year he can propagate his genes. Remember that these resources are all for genetic propagation. It all links back to propagating your own genetic material. And that is why you find that a lot of these smaller antelopes have small territories actively defended against other pairs, and much higher nutritional need, and that's the reason why they have these territories. Let's move a little bit forward. Nice view on that steenbok there, Scotty. The question for the viewers: what is the smallest antelope found in South Africa in total? Not necessarily the Kruger Park. A little bit of a hint there that I gave away. See if anybody can come up with the smallest antelope in South Africa. The steenbok are right up there, but it's not the smallest. Potentially the smallest in this region. Not sure if you see Grysbok here, Scott.
No.
It's more towards the east, so this would make it pretty much the smallest antelope for this particular region. But we want to know which is the smallest antelope in South Africa. One thing that you often find with the smaller monogamous antelope is that the females tend to be larger than the males. He's courting her. Gentle touch with the front hoof on the flanks. It's a very typical antelope courtship method. Even though they are monogamous, there is still courtship involved. Now, we had an earlier question about my favorites. This is definitely amongst my top as far as the smaller creatures are concerned. It's such a pretty little antelope. It appears to be so delicate. Yet found pretty much all over South Africa, with the exception probably of true desert and the coastal forests. But very, very wide habitat tolerance though, in spite of the nutritional needs. Wow. It's amazing. People look at Africa and there's always this mindset of the big five and lion and leopard, and I always compare it to eating a cake. This might sound funny, but a cake consists out of the sponge. You've got the inner, you obviously got the outer, the icing, and then the cherry on top. Now, I'm sure the chef who baked that cake would like you to eat the whole cake as a whole and not just the cherry or the icing. And that's how I look at safari as well. Yes, we've got very dramatic animals in the big five and so forth, but if one is too focused on them and overlook this absolute treasure that's out there, just look at these guys, for instance. I mean, then you're not experiencing the cake for what it is. We're going to be moving on. And leave these two lovebirds. Seems to be answers streaming in regarding the answer to my question: what's the smallest antelope in South Africa? And congratulations to George from Florida, who submitted the first correct answer. We've had answers of Sunni, Dick, Blue Duiker, amongst others. And thank you, George. Your answer is correct. And it is, in fact, the blue duiker, which is a forest specialist found along our coastal forest to the east and south and into the fynbos area of the Western Cape. So congratulations. In everybody else's defense, the Sunni is very, very close. And for a long time, it was believed to be the smallest, but research in the late 80s have concluded that the blue duiker is in fact the smallest in South Africa. Regarding the Dick, They do not occur in South Africa. The closest area where you will find a dik-dik is in Namibia. And further up north, the Kirk's dik-dik up in East Africa, the Damara dik-dik, which is in Namibia and Angola. But they do not occur in South Africa. But yes, the blue duiker is the smallest, weighing about 4 kilograms in the case of an adult male. Tiny, talking this big. But you will confuse it with a rabbit if you see it. Just awaiting an update on James. Seems to be still searching for any sign of the lion there. It's been on and off the vehicle with no joy, unfortunately. Just makes it so much more special, the fact that we did have the lions in the morning. Right, so while Scott and I will reformulate our plan, that's another thing about being out here is you adapt. So we're going to keep on going, and in the meantime I'm going to send you over to James to see what he's up to.
Welcome back, everyone, to Jiga's morning safari and bush bashing experience. We have failed to find the lions. I did go off on foot to see if I could find them, but unfortunately I didn't see anything. I can only apologize to those of you who've just joined us. We had a wonderful sighting of the Nkuhuma Pride earlier this morning, chasing a kudu, and also one of the Matimba males this morning. Now, the reason we've come to this dam where we are now, it's called Twin Dams. I'm not sure where its twin is, but Twin Dams, apparently there was somebody had heard a lion from some way off. And we've also come across a game drive, which is not ideal. Anyway, just say hi to them quickly. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Where's our leopard?
Just under your car, actually. Look careful. Somebody said they heard lions calling here. You didn't hear anything in the area?
Not since we've been here.
Okay.
With Andrew while he was down.
Okay. All right. Yes. Hello. Oh, good heavens. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Yes, full of joy. We're on live streaming at the moment, so it won't stop the chat. But we'll catch up. That's amazing. That's a friend of mine who I didn't know was here. Astonishing. So the lions obviously are not, or the lion hasn't come through here. So what I'm going to do is wind my way back down towards the east and see what we can find. The first Matimba, about 300 meters to the east of where we are now. And so I'm just going to follow up in that direction and see what else we can see. The light, as you can see, is coming and going as it's polarized by the sun, and it's warmed up quite a lot. Now, I do have to make a confession to you. I told you a lie yesterday. It wasn't an on-purpose lie, but it was an untruth nevertheless. We spoke about, somebody asked a question, and I'm afraid I forget the name, about fossils in Africa, and we spoke about Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis, and I said that she was found in the Stakfontein caves just near Johannesburg. That's not in fact true. The name of that famous fossil is in fact Mrs. Pless, and Mrs. Pless was found, also the same species of hominid, was found actually by accident. The discoverer was a chap called Broom, and he tossed a piece of dynamite into these caves and almost exploded the entire skull. But through that, we've made huge discoveries about our human ancestors and origins. Lucy was found in Ethiopia in 1942. So I'm sorry about that. Stop and have a listen here. There's a very common bird calling now. Alarm calling. There, Andrew, he's on the bottom of that acacia there. That's a really nice sighting of them. You don't often see them quite so well. I hope you got a view of him. He's just below there. Can you still see him, Andrew?
Just in the grass.
Just in the grass. That is, of course, the rattling cisticola. The rattling cisticola is a totally nondescript brown bird with a sticky up tail, and is identified mainly from its rattling call. Very unusual to be able to catch them on camera because they fly off quite fast. You need a heat-seeking missile technology on the end of your camera to follow them. They're great if you're tracking the rattling cisticola because they will alarm call at all predators. So sometimes you might find that it's found a sparrowhawk sitting in a tree, you might find it's found a boomslang or tree snake, and you might find that it's found 25 lions. In this case, there were not 25 lions. This is also the area that Mvula was found last night. On Twitter from Ohio, welcome to the last of the morning game drive. You'd like to know why it is that... Morning, how's it going? James, how's it going?
Jason.
Nice to meet you. That's cool. Okay, lekker, thanks. Sorry, Dee. You'd like to know why there seem to be relatively few big males with manes, or with big manes. The answer is that there are relatively few, and that's because for a lion to make it to adulthood, or that sort of big mane size, which is about 6 to 8 years, he has gone through an incredible process of rites of passage and difficulties, and very few males, I think it's something, if I'm not mistaken, around 10% will make it to dominate a territory. The other reason is that lion territories are obviously, the way it works is that a pride will have a territory, and the pride, remember, does not include the male. This is one of the biological inaccuracies with something like the Lion King movie. A lion doesn't, the pride has its own territory, and the male's territories then will encompass, there's a whole lot of guinea fowl there, sorry. Those are quite pretty birds while I waffle on. A male's territory is normally will encompass a number of pride territories. So while we might see the pride quite often, the males will be patrolling much bigger areas, probably up to 10 or 11,000 hectares, and to cover that level of ground on a 3-hour game drive is almost impossible. So you will always see more lionesses and cubs than you do males, because the males struggle to get to maturity, and also they obviously there aren't as many because those that don't make it to maturity disappear off and don't ever dominate a pride area. So not ideal if you're born as a male lion. I'm going to use a terrible metaphor here, or simile. I'm going to do it anyway. It's a real dog-eat-dog world. It should actually, that expression should be, it's a real lion-eat-lion world. The lion world is not one of a noble sacrifice for the other. It's one of complete selfishness in many respects. And to make it to the top of the lion hierarchy, you've got to be very hard, very tough, and willing to basically do anything that it would take. A bit like being a corporate executive, I think. He's a little helmeted guinea fowl. As I've said before, not particularly delicious eating. If you cook them for about 6 weeks in hot water and apricots, they can taste okay. But it's a bit like eating a ball of string. They're much prettier to look at than they are to eat. And that's the helmeted guinea fowl. You can see their funny little helmets as they're scrabbling in the grass. So the morning is now sort of coming to a very peaceful sort of hiatus, where the robins, the white-browed scrub robins, are calling their normal sort of mid-morning call, and the insects, those that are still around in the winter, are buzzing about because it's now started to get quite warm. And things like these guinea fowl with their little scrabbling noises make for a really peaceful sort of sense of wilderness. And I hope sometimes that we're able to transfer that sense of peace through to you, because it was high action this morning, and now it's just kind of, the bush is almost taking a breath. It's exhaling and almost going into a bit of a slumber. It's one of the main reasons I love to live out here. Is that no matter what the tensions and stresses of life, come out here and inhale the fresh air and experience the sun in your face. And listen to the birds. It's a most tremendously peaceful and peace-giving experience. Why so many people are drawn to Africa to come and visit us, and come and see us so often, and why so many of us, despite the troubles that many of the countries in Africa experience, why so many of us stay here and love it and encourage people to come and visit. So we're going to take a little drive forward and just wind our way towards where we saw the male lion this morning. I know he's not there anymore, but it might be quite interesting to see if his brother's tracks haven't popped out, and if they haven't, if Mbula's tracks have popped out. Heidi from Zurich asks a very good question. Heidi, that's a very Swiss name you have there. How appropriate. You've asked how many prides of lions there are in the area. The answer is probably, by the area, I'm not genuinely confused. I'm just trying to think how best to answer it. So a pride territory is probably roughly 6,000 hectares, which is 60 square kilometers. And in Zurich, I'm sure you're operating on the metric system. Bless you, Andrew. Try not to die on the back of the car. And So 60 square kilometers. So the area we're operating on here is about 15 square kilometers, or 1,500 hectares. And so this area doesn't actually encompass one pride territory. It's smaller than a pride's territory, but it does seem to be in the middle of a border. So the Nkuhuma Pride, which we saw this morning, this is where we saw the male lion this morning. The Nkuhuma Pride will most of this property is part of their territory, and then there's another pride from the east which will come on every so often. So probably two pride territories are overlap on Juma, which is where we are now, and then you'll get the dominant males, which will roam way further than that. They probably dominate 2 or 3 different prides, and those, as far as I understand, are the Matimba males, and then further to the south, the Majingilana males, and a couple of others. And there are a few youngsters, I think, called the Styx males, which come in. So it's not easy to say exactly how many prides there are. It's always in a constant state of flux. But the most obvious thing to say to you is that Juma, the 1,500 hectares we operate on, there is a border between 2 prides, so we see mainly 2 prides of lions. Thank you for your question. Very good one. We have a question from Craig in Bonnie, Scotland, but apparently his surname could well be South African. So tell us where you're originally from, Craig. But Craig is currently in Scotland, and if he is a South African, it's no wonder he's staring longingly at this computer screen. You want to know what the closest encounter I've ever had with a leopard or lion is. Craig, I had a leopard on the front of my car bonnet once. It was being chased by wild dogs, and that was a fairly terrifying affair for me. But it ended okay. The lion jumped off, at least the leopard jumped off and ran away eventually without mauling any of my guests or me. And with a lion, I haven't had many close encounters with lions. I've seen plenty of them on foot, but I have never had to stand down a very major lion charge. I think possibly because I've been very careful. Stop here. Just have a look at that hole there, Andrew. And so I've had lions certainly growl at me and certainly give the vehicle the odd charge, and maybe on foot the odd sort of step forward and grunt, but nothing too heavy. Now that hole there is obviously in a termite mound, and it was excavated by an aardvark or aardvark, ant bear in English. First word in the English dictionary, if I'm not mistaken. And once it's been dug out like that, it would be used by all sorts of other little things. So warthogs would go in there, snakes would go in there. So you've got to be a bit careful if you're a warthog that you don't find it home to a resident member. Pythons will go in there, mongoose, hyenas, wild dogs will use them as den sites. And we're now getting to the birthing season of the wild dogs, and we really hope that we might have a den site on Juma. Wild dogs, of course, range over 450 square kilometers. So, I mean, that's a massive amount of land. That's 45,000 hectares. And so if we were to get them on our little patch here, it would be just very special indeed. But that's the kind of hole that they'd be looking for. All right. On we go. Right, and while we look at empty holes, Chris and Scott seem to have found some of the actual pigs, so we'll cross and see them now. I'll continue looking for the leopard.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope James has been entertaining you. I believe James has found these guys at home. The warthogs. From one iconic African animal to another, we had the zebra. And this is definitely one that's always high on the list of species that people wish to come and see in Africa. One of the two wild boar species that's found in this part of the world. Other one is the bush pig. Obviously, this is the warthog. The bush pig, which is more of a nocturnal creature and not so much found in this parts of the world, but have been recorded, but it's not very common to see the bush pig. The bush pig will remind you a lot more of a type of wild boar that you will see in Europe and other parts of the world. You see, warthog's got a very short neck, like most pigs. And, well, firstly, they are omnivores, but the bulk of their diet is basically grass roots and bulbs and tubers that they dig out using their noses, and also they use the tusks to uproot these things. And you can see this one is bent down on its front knuckles in order to reach. Got another question for the viewers. Since we have a dazzle of zebra and all sorts of funny collective nouns for these creatures, what would be the collective noun for warthogs? Little hint, this would be the same as for pigs in general. What is the collective noun for warthogs or pigs in general, as it is actually the same word? While we await some answers being streamed, which you can obviously send to #SafariLive on Twitter, or alternatively email us your answer to questions@wildearth.tv. What we have here, it seems to be a little family where you have a boar and a sow and obviously a young one. Now normally the litter sizes are usually up to about 4 or 5, and this could very well have been the sole survivor of such a litter. I'm trying to figure out if it's not two males or whether it is in fact indeed a female and a male. The one closest to us is just turned out is definitely a male. If you look at the so-called warts on the face, you see where he's scratched now. He's got this protrusion on the cheek. It's not really warts, it's just a cartilage protrusion to protect the face from fighting other males. And you can look further down, closer to the tusk, there's another set of protruding warts that indicates that it is a male. The females only have the set of warts on the cheeks and not the ones just above the tusks. These tusks do look quite formidable, but it is not a weapon. It's mainly used as a digging tool. The ones in the bottom jaw, which is usually not visible unless it opens its mouth, they grind against the upper tusks, and that keeps them razor sharp, and that's the ones that potential predators need to be wary of. I've seen even leopard and lion put to flight by an aggressive warthog. Seem to have an answer coming through on that question from Kathleen on Twitter. And Kathleen says the collective noun for warthogs and pigs is a sounder. And that's 100% correct. We've also had a number of correct answers, and congratulations to everybody who had that right. It is indeed a sounder. Now, warthogs are quite widespread in sub-Saharan Africa, found all the way from South Africa northwards, ranging into even parts of North Africa, West Africa. And in terms of conservation status, it's an animal that's not endangered. In fact, in some areas in South Africa, they are known to be quite a nuisance in some agricultural areas. And so as far as conservation status is, this is the one creature that's still in abundance, even outside major conservation areas. Oof. It's a harsh life out here. He's obviously found a very, very tasty little piece of grass or tuber of some sort and just chased her off there now. Actually, she chased him off. If you look at the female on the right, see, she's got these white beards, which is absent usually with adult males. And you'll find that the juveniles and the females have those white beards, yet the adult males don't. The male that we have here with this female is not an adult male, still a fairly young sub-adult, and therefore he might still show it. Now, the main reason behind that is it's also a disruptive feature that could potentially fool predators into thinking that it is a very large male. That white beards might glister in the sun, and it, at a distance, might even mimic the appearance of tusks, which could potentially deter a predator. This is a fairly large female. I must say, it's not often you see such a large female, or a sow, as we refer to. Well, seems like our time is slowly but surely running out. I just want to take this opportunity to, first of all, thank all my ex-colleagues, Scott and Brent, who's not with us today. He'll be back soon. Just for the opportunity to come to Djuma and just, even though it might be for this morning, be part of this. It's a phenomenal journey, and it's good to see some old faces again. And I would appreciate some feedback on Twitter. Let me know what you thought of my safari. It's always good to be feedback fit, and it would be interesting to see what the vote is out there regarding what I've done today and how I've conducted the journey. We can slowly start pointing homewards, and join us again for this afternoon for the safari. I won't be present. I'd be on my way, but you never know. Maybe you'll see this face again in the near future. So just a thank you to everybody, and over to James.
Welcome back to Jigger, everybody, as we close off the morning game drive. It's been a pleasure having you with us. I'm just going to probably keep moving slightly. Try not to break the car again. We've got about 3 minutes left, and we've had a spectacular morning. We've seen lions, we've seen buffalo. Chris has seen warthog and nyala and impala. He's shown you some fascinating birds, and I must thank you for being nice to him. Feedback is that he hasn't burst into tears, which is always a plus. I nearly burst into tears on my first drive. I didn't really, and I'm sure he didn't either. So thank you for that. And it's just been a really productive morning after some fairly quiet ones, and we're very grateful to the powers that be in the wilderness who've given it to us. And I have feel it, like I was saying to you earlier, it's a very peaceful atmosphere about the wild today. We'll be back obviously later on today at about what time we're going out. We're going out at 3 o'clock this afternoon for us. I'm not sure what time that is for you, wherever you are in the world. Some leopard tracks there. And we'll try and see what we can see. Please keep your eyes on the cameras at the dams. It's really good to have your feedback from them. We really love to hear from you. And we love your questions. And remember, there are no stupid questions. I may give a number of stupid answers, but there's certainly no stupid questions. And so keep them coming. And any comments you have, suggestions, things you'd like to see, things you'd like us to explain on the afternoon game drive, please send them through as well. So I'm just going to go and stop up on the clearing here, and we'll have a look-see over the expanse of African wilderness that we have at our disposal here. Remember, you're driving through 3.5 million hectares of the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, and Djuma is just 1,500 hectares of that huge expanse. So that's about 8 or 9 million acres that we're part of. And it's a great privilege for me every day. Thank you very much for joining us. We've got about 20 seconds left with you. I hope you've had a good time over this Marula crest, where the birds will come and roost, and the sounds of the wilderness will ebb off into the glory of the African midday. See you later.